Hey guys, welcome to 3 Mississippi. Sid here. Thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're going to talk to you about pasturing your poultry and why it's important and how we do ours. Today I am picking up my meat birds for this season. Got that booty warmer on for my booties. This is a temporary brooder. This is not my ideal brooder. We are having to rebuild since the move from California to Mississippi, and it's not quite finished yet, unfortunately. I've got their heat plate, which has been plugged in. You want to plug it in for at least an hour. I always plug it in for a day or two ahead of time when I'm expecting chicks. I've got their water and their food. Here they are. So I got them all out of there. As you can see, that green stuff is the nutrients that they pack them with. And this just helps them make the trip so that they have some access to some nutrients in here. And then obviously with young chicks, they need to be kept warm. But when they pack them tightly like this, that's why they generally on chick shipments have minimums of a certain amount of birds. Part of that reason is to keep the birds in a space that will keep them warm. They can huddle together and stay warm during the trip, because obviously they're not going to be kept under a heat lamp or under a heat plate during the transition time. They'll typically ship them out the first day that they hatched, once the entire order of your shipment is fluffed and dried out from the hatching process. So usually within a few hours, they are packed up and shipped out. With chicks, you have 3 days before they need access to food and water, because they're living off of that yolk, the remainder of the yolk nutrients that they absorbed during the hatching process. So they can actually go 72 hours without any food or water. But obviously, the sooner that you can get them settled and having access to food and water, and with a heat source as well, that is ideal. So they always ship a couple extra. I ordered 50 meat birds. They shipped 52 plus 1 extra laying hen. It's straight run, so it could be a rooster. In my experience, those guys almost never make it, and you never know what breed it is, and I can't tell from looking at it. I'd have to Google to see. A lot of times, you know, chick laying hens look very similar to one another unless they're a very specialized breed. But I'm going to show you how these guys are looking. So as you can see, they shipped out on a Tuesday night. So they were likely hatched sometime on Tuesday. This is day 2. It is now Thursday. So this is day 2. This is how big they are. So for size reference, here we go. This is a 2-day-old Cornish cross meat chicken. And these guys are truly little dinosaurs. In my experience, they, of all the different breeds of chicks, of ducks, of any kind of fowl that I've ever raised, for some reason, these meat chickens are the first ones every time to figure out food and water. And you can see they are gathered around their water. I do have it up on a pedestal. These guys are a very interesting mix of very bright and very dumb. Obviously, you don't want them getting wet. I may have to raise this up even higher. Anyway, but they're already over here eating, drinking, exploring. More of them are on top of the hot plate than underneath it right now. But that's what it looks like underneath the heat plate. And you can raise this heat plate up or down to adjust. I usually like to keep one side slightly higher up than the other side when I put it in the brooder. And there's a method to my madness here. The reason I do that is because inevitably a few of your birds are going to grow a little bit faster than some of your other birds. And this way they can kind of gather in there accordingly. The bigger birds can go to the taller side. The smaller birds, or maybe the birds that are struggling a little bit more, can go to the lower side and be quite comfortable. You see that one that's back there right now, huddled under that lower side. You know, that one, those are the ones that are like, oh, I'm cold, I need to warm up. These guys are like, see, this one's not doing so great. You can tell when you get them, you see how that one's eyes keep kind of closing. It's drinking water, but it's a little less alert than the other birds. You can see it's closing its eyes. I'm going to stick this one directly under the heat plate and hope that it stays. I kind of like to watch them when I first unload them. I try to look for signs of that, because that will kind of tell me sort of what my rate loss is going to be for the next day. Inevitably, you will lose a couple of birds here and there. ideally, if you keep the temperature right and they have access to food and water, they will do okay. Prepare yourself that you are going to lose a certain amount of birds. I would say with a batch this size, it's very possible that I could lose, 5 or so birds. They immediately go to the food and the water, but I do make sure that I shove them under the heat plate to show them that it's warm there as soon as I unload them. There's another reason why a lot of times it's great to raise a few chicks with turkey poults. Some of them are slow to figure out how to eat and drink. A turkey poult, for example, is about one of the dumbest creatures you will run across when it comes to just simply lack of will to survive. They don't figure out how to eat and drink. So throwing a chick or two in with them really does help with their viability. It shows them and teaches them where the heat plate is, where to eat and drink, and for some reason they will follow their lead. So I do always recommend, if you're doing turkeys, to throw a couple chickens in with them if they're not being raised up by mama. So today is the 22nd of April. These guys were hatched on the 4th of April, and so they're just shy of 3 weeks old here, just by a couple of days. So I'm going to show you what they're looking like now. As you can see, they are starting to really feather out. They have been off heat now for about a week, and I've got some escapees happening, but they, in about a week, believe it or not, are going to be ready for the pasture. This is actually the 3rd chicken tractor that we have made. We made 2 over back when we were TCR, and now that we're 3 Mississippi, we're going closer to the 2nd design that we had before, which is the hoop design here. That, as you can see, I can stand underneath, so it's very easy for me to get in here, change food and water and all of that. And this pasture that you see here behind me is what they're going to be moved on throughout the season here for the next couple of months until they're big enough to actually be processed out at the size that we want. Cannot wait to get them out here and get this finished.
When your soul is lonely, sad and blue, ain't got no love and shoulders to lean on, there's always a sunny side across the river. Take a ride, take a swim, and all your worries go away. Go cross the river and you'll be fine. Go counting winners, it's right down the line. You'll be alright on the sunny side. Ain't got nowhere to turn your winding wheel. There's always
on our homesteading and farming journey about 8 years ago, we didn't know where it was going to take us or what we were doing when it came to certain things that we wanted to get into. One of those things was chicken. So we had to learn how to raise those birds properly to give them all the health benefits that would then translate to us receiving those health benefits. We really dove into what were the best ways to raise these meat birds and which meat birds were the best for us to raise that we had access to. For us at the time, it was Cornish cross. You've heard them referred to Rock's cross or jumbo Cornish. They go by a lot of different names, but it's all basically the same bird. It's the same type of meat that you are buying at the grocery store. It's that same breed of chicken that is kind of grown to be a little bit larger. They are a crossbreed of chicken, bred for that genetic perfection. They don't breed on their own. They are not self-sustaining in the sense that you can keep a flock of them and breed them and keep them going. They just get so big so fast. They are little eating machines. So typically you want to process them somewhere between the 4 to 16 week mark, depending on the size of the bird that you want and how you've raised them. Now, that being said, pasturing them, if you're able to, is definitely the way to do it. Now, chances are if you are raising meat birds, you've got at least a little bit of land because they do take up a little bit of space. We have been doing meat chickens now for 8 years, and I don't buy chicken at the store anymore. This is how we get our chicken. We also, over the years, always raised more than enough, several hundred a year, and I would always sell the birds. That was part of our business back when we were in California, and that was the Crouch Ranch. Out here at 3 Mississippi, since we are just starting out, we're only doing a small amount of birds that are mainly going to be for us. We might sell a few of them, but this year we're starting small. We're only doing a batch of 50, where in years past, in one season, like I said, we've done several hundred. Now, since these birds grow so fast, they are typically ready to be off heat at about 4 weeks, and they are typically about the size of your hand. This size is what would be referred to as a game hen size, typically around 1.5 pounds or so. Some people go ahead and process them out at this point and don't ever pasture them once they're off heat. That's perfectly acceptable if you like to have the smaller, what I call personal pan size chicken. Most people are like us though, and they like to grow their birds a little bit longer so that they can get a little bit bigger so that we can get more out of them. Now, once they're 4 weeks and they are off of heat and feathered out enough, they're ready to go outside. Now, in California, our winters were much shorter, so I would typically start brooding my meat birds in around February, which meant they were ready to go out to pasture in March at the beginning of spring. Now, out here, our winter is a little more traditional, so I didn't start these meat birds that we have now until April. Now, here we are on May. The big thing is that 1 month mark of their growth. Now, mine have been off heat for a while because it has not been cold here, but they weren't big enough, they weren't feathered out enough to be able to be ready to go out to the pasture. But around that 4 to 5 week mark, again, depending on your bird's growth, every batch can be a little bit different. They're ready to go out in that chicken tractor in the pasture. Now, a chicken tractor is basically a mobile cage, if you will. A lot of people use these for their rabbits as well. It's basically something that's going to keep them safe from predators. It's going to keep them in a certain area so that as they're grazing, they're only grazing in the area that you're allowing them to, and fertilizing that ground that you're allowing them to, and then moving them to the next area the next day or two, depending on how many birds and how big your tractor is, so that you're not burning each section of land that you're pasturing them on. This allows for the ground to get fertilized, for the grass to regenerate, and it helps to limit your parasite load because you're not keeping them on the same spot for very long. Birds in a tractor can mow down each patch so fast, you guys won't believe it. Every day you will pretty much have to move them unless you have a very small amount of meat birds in a large tractor. Now, the nice thing about this is because they are outside enjoying the sunshine and eating the bugs and eating the green grass, their meat is going to be so much better for you. I'm sure you've heard people talk about how some of the meat that you can get in the stores now is vitamin and nutrient deficient compared to what we had several years ago. Part of that reason is because of the way that the industry farms now, where they're not letting the land that the animals are eating off of regenerate in a way that replenishes it. So by pasturing your birds and doing it in a smart way by moving them every day on your pasture, you're really letting them get the best benefits of all of those nutrients in the soil. You're replenishing that soil, which the next year it's going to come back rich and wonderful, full of all of those wonderful things, so that the meat is full of all those vitamins and minerals that we need, those B12 that we get from meat and things like that, that have been diminished over the years because of over harvesting the land. Now, besides the fact that it's better for you to raise your own meat and to know where your food comes from, it's cheaper, guys. When you're raising your own birds, it is so much cheaper. If you're able to get them out on pasture, you are going to save a lot of money. You still will have to supplement their feed. You won't have to supplement them as much. They'll be eating all of that wonderful green grass and bugs and foraging and eating the weeds and the flowers and all of the things that grow out of the earth in the area that they're in, which is so wonderful. If you can get them to eat off the land that's already there, that you're just going to have to mow, and they're going to be able to mow it down for you, and you're going to be able to harvest their meat in a few weeks, that is huge. Now, meat birds are kind of weird. A lot of times you'll see, because they grow so fast, and even though they have a high protein diet, it takes so much energy for them to grow so quickly at such a rapid rate. You may notice that your birds look, well, bald in patches, and that's normal. A lot of meat birds do not grow the way your typical laying hens, ducks, geese, fowl will grow out and feather. These guys look like little Frankensteins as they're growing up. They may have some bald patches. They may have areas, especially near joints like wings, on their back or by their legs. By those joint areas that get a lot of movement for some reason, seems to be the areas where they get these bald patches, where as they lose their fluff, their adult feathers just haven't quite grown in yet. They can look a little funny, but it is normal. It is something that happens with these guys. It is just one of the oddities about them, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It doesn't mean they're sick. It's just part of them. The thing to consider sometimes too, once you are pasturing your birds, if they are looking a little bit baldy, is that they do get sunburns, and that can make the skin on your bird very tough when you do go to process it and cook it. It can give it kind of an unsightly look. It's not going to hurt it. It's not going to hurt you to consume it. It's just not going to look as pretty necessarily, and it can make it a little bit tougher. Another common thing with meat birds that people kind of freak out about is they do sometimes, in their muscles, again, because of the way that they grow so quickly, they get this greenish, purplish, almost looks like bruising on them. This green and purple bruising is often referred to as green muscle disease, and is very common in these broiler birds. However, if you pasture them, they are more active. They're foraging, they're walking around, they're moving. They are less likely to have that unsightly green muscle disease. Again, it is completely harmless. It does not hurt the bird. It is not harmful for you to consume. It simply is just a sign of their inactivity. So letting them be pastured will really help prevent that unsightly end. So guys, the reason that you should be pasturing your meat chickens is very clear. Lots of reasons here, guys. They're going to be fertilizing your earth for you. They are going to be healthier for you to consume, because they will have eaten all of that wonderful pasture that you've grown and that you've been nurturing. Going to be full of so many more vitamins and minerals, much more than what you would get in the store. You're going to be saving money, because when you raise your birds on the pasture, you're not having to feed them a commercial feed or any other kind of bagged feed or grain at the same quantities that you would if you were keeping them in a pen somewhere or in a box. Your birds are going to be happier and healthier when they are outside. That's where they're meant to be. When they are old enough and feathered out enough and you can put them in that tractor, they're going to be able to move around and do what birds do and forage. And that is going to help prevent them from getting that green muscle disease, which again is unsightly but harmless to you to consume. Once they're 4 weeks old and they are out there on that pasture, you can really process them at any time from there. We've had some birds, some of the roosters in the group that have maybe developed a lot more quickly and got very big. And we've done them at like 8 weeks and they've been 5 pounds already. We've had some that those batches just tended to be smaller, and we let them go 16 weeks and they were only 5 pounds. Same diet, same routine. It really just depends on the hatch group. There is definite variation. So do not feel bad when you are raising your meat birds if maybe they aren't growing as quickly, or maybe you feel like they grow too quickly. I always say a good rule of thumb is somewhere between that 8 to 16 week mark, depending on the size of the bird that you want to process, the amount of room you have in your freezer, what your plans are for them, if you're selling them. These are all factors that you want to consider when you are out there eyeballing them to decide, do we want to process now or do we want to wait another week or two? We'll do another video when it gets to that point about how to process the birds yourself and some of the best practices that we found over the years for making it a streamlined and easy day to get it done. But just getting them out to pasture and getting them in that tractor is huge, guys. So important. I can't stress it enough. It really is a wonderful thing to have those birds out on pasture, and to have them in that tractor is a no-brainer. You want them safe from coyotes, because while they will be more agile than birds that were raised in a box in a tight confined space because they have been outdoored and pastured, they are not Olympic runners. They cannot get away from predators. They are not, you'll see, they kind of waddle when you raise, I mean, they're not super fast. And so the thing to keep in mind is they're not going to be able to outrun predators. So you really, really want them, and they're not very bright. There is that too. Of all the chickens, they're down there at the bottom. But that's okay. We don't love them for their brains or their beauty or their agility. We like them for their meat. Tractoring your chickens is the way to go, guys. You can do a simple build. It doesn't require a lot of materials. It doesn't require a lot of time. And it's going to be amazing to get them out there and have them safe and secure out on that pasture, able to eat all that wonderful green stuff. Frankie and Mike worked really hard getting that chicken tractor ready, and we got those birds out there settled in, ready to go. They are going to just be num 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 up that pasture, and they are going to be leaving wonderful deposits in their wake that's just going to make that soil so much healthier. I'm so excited about this, guys, and I hope that you have the best time raising your birds and pasturing your meat chickens this season. If you have any questions, guys, feel free to drop them below in the comments. I'm always happy to talk chicken. I love talking about birds. They are my passion. I love them. So any questions that you have, feel free to drop them here, and I will do my best to answer it. There you have it, guys. Thank you. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time. But until then, stay safe, stay blessed, and of course, safety's off.